one of the biggest problems that I have with Return of the Jedi, there shouldn't have been a second Death Star. That was a bad story idea to me. It was terrible. It was nothing more than, in my opinion, a story trope that they simply decided, okay, we need another big bad thing for them to run from. We don't really have one, so let's just create another Death Star. In my opinion, the second Death Star, it you created it too fast. It was done way too fast. There was only supposed to be, and this is where I have a problem with part of their timeline. So see, as a Star Wars fan, I can say out loud, there are certain things about what this is, even though I love it as much as I do, where they screwed up. Okay? Because story-wise, there's only supposed to be relatively 6 to 7 months between the end of The Empire Strikes Back and the beginning of Return of the Jedi. It's too short. It's a matter of pacing, and it comes down to the rhythm that you get from the material. The reason why, in so many ways, there are issues with the J.J. Abrams trilogy, even though he didn't do all three, Rian Johnson did the second one, is simply because it's called the Abrams trilogy because he did the other one.
Sure.
Part of the thing, and JJ has let it be known across the world that he's a huge Star Wars fan. He actually directed and wanted to get the '09 version of Star Trek because he wanted to prove to Lucasfilm that he could direct a Star Wars movie. And once they saw his version of Star Trek, it was, ooh, he can do it.
That's right.
So go ahead and give him Star Wars.
That's right.
As much as I love The Force Awakens, there's one problem with The Force Awakens. Well, not one, but there's a major problem with The Force Awakens, in my opinion. The Force Awakens almost has too much in common with the original Star Wars.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
It's too much of a mirror of what you've already seen.
That's exactly right, which is an interesting criticism. It's a very interesting criticism, particularly given what you talked about. We're trying to stay true to the original material, and it's almost as if J.J. Abrams stayed too close to the original material.
Too close.
That's fascinating, though. But I can't hate him for that, because there seems to have been such a divergence. I think he was trying to bring it back, and maybe he overdid it. But anyway,
one of the other things that kind of made everybody groan and kind of go, Abrams and Rian Johnson, is there was one thing throughout that new Star Wars trilogy that we as old fans never got. Never got. And that was, you never saw
the dark side.
Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Harrison
together.
There. And we as fans felt wrong. I'm telling you directly, that's one of the major criticisms of the entire thing. We felt robbed.
This is what it is. This is what it is. I think I get it. I really think I get it. And what I mean by that is that I don't get it.
Do you mind if I give you one other Star Trek example?
No, by the way, no. If I feel free, but I want to explain what I mean by that.
Oh, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt your thoughts, so please go ahead.
What I mean by that is exactly that. It's the Star Trek example. Listen, one of the beefs that I have is pseudo fans pretending that they're genuine fans. I am a fan of Marvel comic books. I know Marvel comic books, and I have a sensibility to Marvel comics that most Marvel comic fans don't have, right? And so I can understand the nuance in a way that's hard to describe. Why is this right as opposed to why this is wrong? And it's a difficult thing to try to explain to someone who is a pretend fan. Now, a pretend fan has a lot of, credentials to be a fan. They could cite how many books they've read or how many movies they've watched or how many of the cartoons they've watched. They can, list their credentials, and yet they can still miss that nuance of what makes you an absolute and true fan. I take that so seriously that as a comic book guy who has maybe as many Batman comic books as I have Spider-Man comic books, I don't consider myself a Batman fan. I love Batman. I'm a huge Batman fan. Well, I should say I don't consider myself a Batman aficionado. I don't have the nuance for Batman. Why? Because my love and my experience from Batman comes from almost the extraneous stuff of Batman. It started from The Dark Knight Returns, which, you're missing a whole bunch if you're starting from Dark Knight Returns. It started from the animated series, which, oh my God, you're completely disconnected from the comic books if that's where you're starting, because the animated series, as good as it was based on The Dark Knight, which was based on, and so on and so forth. It started from the movies. And so as much as I know Batman, I don't really know Batman the way you know Batman. Like, I know Spider-Man, okay? I know Spider-Man. I don't know Batman that same way. Mm-hmm. And so when you're in that position, it's difficult to understand what the true fan means. And that's what I mean by, I get it that I'm not a true Star Wars fan, even though I've watched the movies and I could list my credentials, but I get it that I don't get it in the same way you get it. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's what I meant by that. And ultimately, as a layperson, I don't know if you would find this interesting or not, but as a pseudo fan of the Star Wars trilogy, I see it differently. I see it, and I defer to you, by the way, and I'm not going to say this is an opinion that's worth anything. It's not. I'm not the one that should be opining about Star Wars, okay? I'm an observer. I'm lucky to be invited into the room. But out of curiosity, what I see is, I see the original Star Wars, the original, 3, 4, and 5. I see that as the basis of what Star Wars, the creation of Star Wars.
And by the way, that's 4, 5, and 6.
Forgive me, I'm sorry. Good catch. I thought something was wrong. I'm sorry, 4, 5, and 6. I see that as the original, the magic is there, okay? Then I see 1, 2, and 3 as George Lucas trying to bring his vision to light, but in my opinion, and again, this is just my opinion, in a way that doesn't live up to 4, 5, and 6. And I see J.J. Abrams trying to deliver his trilogy, 6, 7, 8, in a way that tries to recapture the magic of 4, 5, and 6. And I think it's a difficult job, and I guess he failed, and I don't really know why he failed. I don't really know why he failed.
And in all honesty, I don't think he failed, because The Force Awakens was a huge leap. I don't think he failed. The failure, even though I said what I did a few moments ago about how he literally retold the first film with The Force Awakens, and I admit that. And I'm not saying that Rian Johnson is the worst person in the world. Failure started with him, because he simply decided, I'm going to step away from all of this, not just the J.J. Abrams material, but all of it. I want to put my own spin on it. I want to do my own thing. And every creator, whether you're an artist, whether you're a writer, or a composer. Everybody has the ability and the right to be able to do that as long as the people in charge are saying, yeah, you can go ahead and do your own thing and make your own song and dance. The problem was they allowed him to step too far away from, again, the source material. He simply said out loud, and pardon my French, the hell with everything else that's been done. Nothing else in this world is going to matter except for what I'm about to give you. And I'm not worried about attaching this to 6 other movies or 7 other films. I'm not worried about whatever the future is going to be when mine is done.
Yeah.
He simply didn't care. And that wedge, because I call it a wedge, the wedge that he drove between all the other material upset the apple cart.
I understand.
It's along the line of why I said a few moments ago as well, the wrong man directed Return of the Jedi. There's nothing wrong with Richard Marquand as a director. That was the name of the gentleman who did it. In my opinion, based on what Lucas needed, not wanted, but needed to have done, should have grabbed Irvin Kershner and said, Irvin, I know you just did Empire, but I need you again. Because that's one of the things that's the problem with that, is that The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi are so different that there's a certain disconnect between the two films.
Interesting.
That's why Star Wars as A New Hope and Empire work together so well, because they almost go together. Like I said earlier about Star Trek's 2 and 3, they almost go together as one complete movie. In the case of Star Trek, you could remove, and I love Star Trek 4, 5 not so much. I knew what they were trying to do, but the movie was bad. You could almost remove 4 and 5 and put 2, 3, and 6 together and have a complete story.
Yeah.
It's a long, that's what they needed to do. The thread between Empire and Jedi is not there. And the thread between what was intended to be the continuation from 7 into 8, and then from 8 into 9 from Star Wars, it's not there because Rian Johnson tore the middle of it out.
Wow.
There's no connective tissue. It's
Wow.
Episode 8 is only a Star Wars movie in name only.
Wow.
Seriously, the movie is so far disconnected from a lot of what they had already established, it almost doesn't work as a film because he removes so much of what needed to be there. He simply tore it out, he took it out. And the struggle between episodes 8 and 9 relating back to the rise of Skywalker is, in all honesty, Franz, the studios on both ends, meaning Disney and Lucasfilm, like I told you a long time ago, they looked at the final version that Rian Johnson had done and was, where the hell did our franchise go? Why did Kathleen Kennedy let him do this? Why did she let him do this? And that's the problem. She gave him carte blanche. She handed him a bunch of credit cards, and all that kind of thing, and said, "Go make your movie. I don't care what you do, just go make your movie." And that's what happened.
Has he been interviewed about? Has he been interviewed about that? And I'm sure he's felt the backlash. But has he been interviewed? What's his point of view? What does he defend it? Does he?
Yes.
From what point of view does he defend it? Does he say no, my vision was more important, or does he say no, I was trying to capture the original vision?
Nope. He says my vision is more important.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, because he's had a couple of recent interviews because of some shakeups at Disney and at Lucasfilm to begin with. His opinion is, and again, pardon my French because I don't speak Spanish, but the thing Sorry. Um, the, the thing is with him is that he looks at people like me, and even you being an old time casual fan, but you know enough about the material to walk into it and say, okay, I'm going to try to enjoy this.
Yeah.
He looks at the fans as being a bunch of idiots.
Well, that's yeah.
To be honest, he has actually come out loud and said they're a bunch of assholes.
Oh my God! Wow.
I'm not joking.
Like when you make edgy, bold decisions like you did in this movie, how worried are you that you might also piss off people that are?
Can I just say though, a lot of times I would say to Ryan, we got to think about the fans, and he said, no, we got to think about the story, and we got to think about our movie, which
Well, having grown up as a Star Wars fan for myself for my entire life, and having been on the other side of that curtain for the majority of my life, I know firsthand that how passionate Star Wars fans are. I know that every Star Wars fan has a list of stuff they want and don't want from all of these movies. But I also know that if we had, like Mark said, you got to think about your movie first and foremost. And I know that George Lucas, the one thing he never did was to make any decision in any of his movies based on some idea of making anyone but himself happy with the story. And I know that that's, if you second guess every creative decision that you have, that you're led to with some idea of, yes, but is this abstract notion of the fandom going to approve of this, then you're going to make a bad movie. And that's the one thing that nobody wants, I think.
Wow. So he needs to be Joe Schumacher, man. He needs to be out of the industry. He needs to pay the price.
Part of why I truly wish that they had almost asked Gareth Edwards, the man who directed Rogue One, to take Episode 9, but they didn't do it. Because I think you would have ended up with a more cohesive story if they had asked Edwards to do it. That's another reason why Rogue One works as well as it does, because it has that pathos and that rhythm to it that makes it all work. And part of what I was going to say a few minutes ago is that when Abrams directed the 09 version of Star Trek for the big screen, part of why that movie worked is because he went back and looked at the things that made the chemistries between William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, and company work so well, and he applied them to his new cast.
Yeah.
See, that's part of where, even though JJ started something, it wasn't completely finished because you did not get that cohesive thread throughout the entire story. And that's why I say Rian Johnson for the new material was the death of it, because everything that Lucas established, using this again as an example and to try to have you understand part of that rhythm, is when Lucas established that world in 77 with the original film and then went into 1980, he and Irvin Kershner had an understanding. They had a collective vision between the two of them, and they made you care about the characters. They made you care about the environment, the worlds that they created, and the interactions between even the actors. It all worked. Abrams started that with The Force Awakens, and everybody was, "Ooh, this is getting good. We can't wait until the middle section happens." And people develop their own thoughts and ideas, as we always do with movies, and thought, well, okay, they're going to go in this direction, okay? And that's not what happened.
I understand.
So within
remind me again, why did J.J. Abrams not do the second one? Remind me quickly.
He simply didn't want to do it.
It was too. Was it a George Lucas burnout situation?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The only reason why he came back to direct Skywalker is because they were in such bad shape they begged him, and they gave him extra money for coming back.
Interesting.
He wasn't going to do Skywalker.
Star Wars, for whatever reason, burns people out. I don't really know why, but it burns people out.
Honestly, Star Trek does the same thing. That's part of why you haven't gotten a new movie.
Yeah. I don't know what it is about those movies. And I don't know what it is about those movies. But very quickly, I just wanted to relate something about Star Trek as you talked about it, because I know Star Trek and I understand the sensibilities of Star Trek. J.J. Abrams' Star Trek was fascinating to me because I went to see it with another Star Trek, purist, right? And I'm a Star Trek purist. And we walked out of the movie theater and she didn't like it. She didn't like it. And I thought it was a great movie. And I thought J.J. Abrams delivered a really great movie. But she didn't like it because of the purity of it. It wasn't Spock, it wasn't Kirk. And so what I thought the out that J.J. Abrams took, which to me made beautiful sense and made me appreciate the movie completely, was that within the Star Trek movie, he admitted, this isn't really Star Trek. This is a Star Trek. This is a Captain Kirk. And he made sure to understand, look, there's a timeline here. We have our original Star Trek. We have our original James T. Kirk, which we're not going to play around with. But since we can't go back in time, here's another James T. Kirk. And by bringing the original Spock into that universe, it was like, well, in that case, you could do anything you want because it's not 100%. So it's an alternate universe. I thought that was a brilliant pass, even though he did things that were like, making Uhura with Spock didn't make sense to me. But it wasn't the Star Trek. It was a Star Trek, which I thought was brilliant. And so I was able to accept it as a movie. And as a movie, it was entertaining and it was well done and action-packed and well performed and things.
I want to just point out something to you.
Go.
Because this is something that both of the sci-fi universes share as far as Star Trek and Star Wars. Do you know who the other character is in Star Trek outside of Kirk and company?
Do I know who the other character
There's
is?
another character involved that's beyond the actors themselves. And the same thing is there for Star Wars. And I'll
Interesting. That's a great question. My instinctual answer, and I'm not thinking about it very, very thoroughly, but it comes in the next generation, which would be Q, but I don't think that's what you mean. I don't know.
Part of the love and the appeal.
No, hold on. Give me one more chance.
Okay.
Do you mean the Enterprise, the spaceship itself?
Yes!
Give me a chance, baby.
Yes!
Give me a chance.
You nailed it. You nailed it.
Of course.
You absolutely nailed it. And in Star Wars, it's the Millennium Falcon.
Yes, absolutely.
The two franchises share that.
By the way, and I love your eye and your ear, but it reminds me just like when you produce a film or a TV show, or whatever it is, a work of art, so many pieces have to come into play. And they have to come into play at the right time. The score of a movie, we talked about Rocky, the score of a movie is so important to the movie. And when it comes into play, and the cinematography and the performance, there's so much that makes a movie work. It's almost like magic in a way. Like for all those components to come together well is fascinating to me. It's like when you have a great song and a great video to go with it, type of thing. It's like, how did that happen? Like, why did it happen? It's a fascinating endeavor to me. It's a fascinating work of art when it all comes together like that. And that's what, going back to the original topic, that's what I think the Mandalorian does well. It has every little component worked beautifully. To me, the cinematography of the Mandalorian, and you could see in the end credits where it comes from. The storyboard designs that they come up with, and they bring those storyboard designs to life. But all of that kind of works together. You could see it's just really beautifully delivered, in my opinion.
Yes.
It's just beautifully delivered.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why a lot of people are looking for. Because are you aware that beyond the Mandalorian, and again, I know you have to go, but
No, go ahead.
they're going to do a Lando Calrissian series as well.
Oh, is that right?
It's already in development, and they're bringing in Donald Glover to reprise the role. And what
Which
I
which
think,
which he did in the movie. Now, that scares me a little bit. Again, I defer, but that scares me a little bit because because here's the difference. Like I paint, I draw, I'm an artist, right? And one of the things that I don't do is I don't paint. I did it once, but it was a total failure. But I don't paint my family. I don't paint my wife, my kids, or anything like that. And the reason is because if I paint a generic woman, then you look at the painting and you go, "Oh, this is a nice painting of a woman." If I paint my wife and you know my wife, you're like, "This is a nice painting, but it doesn't quite look like, the eyes off a little bit. You could see the flaws because it's. So I say this to say the danger could be we as fans have an image of who these characters are. And perhaps the challenge becomes capturing not who the character is, but who the fans have in their mind as to who the character. And that's a tricky thing. And perhaps the difference between the Abrams movies and the Mandalorian movies, perhaps it's the fact that he messed with the iconic characters in a way that we didn't like. Like, no, I wanted to see them together. We have those types of criticism that if it wasn't about those characters at all, we may have given it a bigger pass. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
You see what I mean? So
I agree with you.
so
Now,
it's a trickier.
I do think a Lando series will work, but there's only one way that you can pull it off, in my opinion.
Good. But you see, already that's a danger. You see, that statement is a dangerous statement because there's only one way to pull it off. That's your way,
Oh yeah, okay. But what I would do is allow Billy D. Williams to come in
Ooh.
and allow him to basically tell different segments of his history.
Ooh.
As if he's, cataloging it for a book or some sort of a data.
I love it. Brilliant. Genius, my friend.
Genius.
Genius. Genius. We could stop right there, man. Genius. That is absolutely genius.
That's what I would do.
That's genius. I could see it right now. Forgive me. Like I'm taking and running with it. In a Mandalorian style presentation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Billy D. Williams is sitting down, okay? And he's recounting the stories of the old days. Yes. And then boom, anything you do becomes acceptable because it's grounded on the real character.
And you would still hear Lando narrating in the background from time to time.
Yeah.
And the reason why this works so well, and I'm not saying that my idea is perfect, but the reason why it works, Franz, is you no longer have Carrie Fisher.
Yeah.
Mark Hamill is really up there in age, but then again, so was Billy D. So you're not going to get Hamill jumping through windows as Luke Skywalker the way you did because he can't physically do it anymore.
Nope.
Harrison Ford is in the same situation.
Of course.
And if you were to do it correctly, you could even bring back Alden Ehrenreich as young Han, and you have young Han and young Lando together again.
Wow.
By
the way, that makes sense too, because clearly there's a history between them. Clearly they had their little adventures. And so that would be a perfect exploration of those adventures.
But you've lost so many of the primary characters in terms of the actors themselves in real life. This is a perfect way to do it because all you'd have to do is say that Lando is one of the last survivors of that original group. Yep. And years later, decades later, whoever is around either as children from a lot of your original rebellion leaders or other people that are part of what is left of the new republic, or even if it was a thing where, let's say, Lando is in jail, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. And he's cataloging everything, and as he does, that's your story.
Yeah. You said you don't think it's perfect. I think it is perfect. I think that would be the best way to handle it. I really do.
This looks like a job for Superman.
Hey, look! It's Spider-Man!
The dynamic duo return next week. Don't miss it.